I give thee all, I can no more, though poor the offering be. My heart and lute are all the store that I can give to thee. A lute whose gentle song reveals the soul of love full well. And better for a heart that feels much more than lute can tell. Though love and song may fail, alas, to keep life's clouds away, at least 'twill make them lighter pass, or give them if they stay. And even if care and moments flings a discord o'er life's happy strain, oh, let love but gently touch the string, 'twill all be sweet again. Oh, let love but gently touch the strings, 'twill all be sweet again. Greetings, friends. How are you doing? Just a quick little hangout. Continue on a conversation I had with Nomi Nom over at Jamie Brown. Just before I go into chat, I just want to bring up a picture, and I'll bring Nomi in, then I can send him a link. Hang on, where is my picture? It's not there. Did I open one? I did. Let me get rid of this one. Okay, 1 second now. I just want to bring up another picture. Why come that's not coming up now? This is a comparison made over with... Okay, what am I going to do here now? Okay, how can I not... Let me just quit out of this for a second. Yeah, just before you come in, Nomi, I'll just go over this again myself. It won't take a few minutes, and I'll just point out why there is validity in to making a necessary comparison. It's not a ridiculous notion, and anyone who sort of reacts so violently against it on especially a superficial glance, when it certainly takes more and merits more than that, well, that's not good to me, right? That's not good to me. I'm going to be suspicious about that, because I certainly do understand somewhat the nature of this arena that we're in, and anybody is capable of being anybody else. And this is not unfounded sort of... Yeah, here we go. So here we go. That's that came up this time. So here's a comparison. Not saying that it was so or anything. I'm just looking for a point of view. We're talking about Eric Dubé. Nomi, he can come in. He makes the claim that he thinks he encountered this guy in a recording studio, in a television studio in Toronto. And he says that Toronto is a sort of a base for CIA and intelligence operations, especially in terms of media output. And a lot of these people could indeed be actors on the stage, and are indeed actors on the stage. And yeah, this is not telling us anything we haven't known, but to nail it down further, this is always good to know. Now, on the surface of this, they don't look immediately like the same person. What struck me, this is a comparison that you put together. This is Rick Clay on the left. I don't know much about him, but a big conspiracy man, apparently. A provider of lots of good information, good content. Tall and thin, You'll note the name Rick Clay. Rick Clay. He suddenly disappeared from the scene. I don't know, 2010. Again, I don't know much about him, but it sort of began in mysterious circumstances. He vanished from the scene. Eric Dubay then comes to fruition. I think they sort of overlap, but that's not impossible to arrange as well if we are dealing with one being indeed the other. Now, what struck me immediately was the lips. Very close to one another. Slight variation, clearly, but yeah, it's a great similarity. The other thing that struck me was, let me just go around the corner here, the jawline, and just that peculiar curve to it. I don't want to try and exaggerate anything, but you can definitely see that sort of contour. It's a similarity. That's what you say. You're drawn to it. And just on the basis of this photograph alone, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that we're dealing with one and the same person. Also made the note that this guy's skin is very clear, it's very dull, porcelain-like. And, you know, we're dealing with top of the range sort of disguising techniques. You know, we'll certainly entertain more possibilities than we might have previously when we realize the nature of this arena we're in as well. We will certainly sit up and take notice and look twice about what we're seeing. Regarding the nose, anything can be altered. If this is some sort of a mask in the first place, yeah, just as a matter of peeling it off back to the natural look. There's something deep set about his eyes here, and I find this about a lot of characters. The eyes are deep set, and it gives them that ghoulish, evilly sort of look. But in fact, if you're dealing with very thin prosthetics, I think to myself in terms of like, you know, balloons, ordinary rubber balloons, that sort of level, even thinner prosthetics put on by professionals. This is not beyond the realms of possibility. After all, I do entertain the idea that Will Smith played the role of both Obama and Osama. So Will Smith is the core figurine, if you will. So that would certainly require a lot of makeup, right? And a lot of consistent sort of effort as well. Yeah, so this is pretty much where we're coming from. Nomi's going to come on now and present something very, very interesting. I don't. I'll get his views on this further. The head shape is pretty similar as well. The eyes are not as different as you would imagine. This is the thing. So we have to engage your imagination. Ultimately, it involves, if you're interested enough, do the comparison yourself. I'm not sold on this being the same character, and if it turned out not to be, that's fine with me. It doesn't change the fact that, well, I think or I know that he is, Eric Dubay is an actor on the stage, just like the rest, playing out their parts. And as I said, that almost violent reaction by both Des and Dee to comparisons and or even entertaining the notion that these are the same person. Well, that's uncalled for and not welcome, right? If you're wrong about this, that's fine. As I say, Dean, I think it's important enough in one sense and potential anyway to give it a half an hour, give it some due consideration. I've had this picture, you'd created this picture maybe over a year ago or whatever, just for comparison. He didn't think they were the same either. I'm still not sold that they're not. I haven't ruled it out, you know. Anyway, let me go into chat. And Nomi, I'll just send you the link if you're around. Okay, let me. I'm opening the camera now. No need for that. And this is going to be very, very interesting. I never considered this comparison. And the minute I saw the photograph, I said, man, that is... okay, we're going to get plenty of different views here. And look, if you think it's not the same, if you think it is the same, that's fine. I hope maybe he won't turn up now after his... okay, maybe he's not here. Even if it's not, I'll keep talking anyway. I'll go along with a few other comparisons. Actually, do a live comparison myself, right, just to see how it what do you call it? How it turns out. Because as I say, I never considered the possibility before. and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. Just have a look through to see if Nomi's there. How you doing, Ute, Baron Bronskovic, Luke Marshall. Yeah, just say hi to everybody. Johan Carlos, how you doing? BM. FaZe, how are you doing? Brandon Cook. Okay. Luke Marshall, anyone with the link as well for chat, that's cool. Yeah, Tesla Truth, how you doing, man? Amazing connections, Tesla Truth today. I mean, excellent. The birds, I'll actually go over that as well. The two birds from the Google Doodle, which I said are the two birds in that were carrying the dodo to dry land in the Walt Disney movie, are a cockatoo, right, and a toucan, which makes sense in terms of word connection, right? The cockatoo is holding a pineapple and an apple pie. So isn't it funny that these were the two birds that transported the dodo onto dry land in the 1951 Disney movie? It's amazing, you know, and that whole Google Doodle is all about the dodo. It's all about the penguins. Remember I was talking about that, the IPS penguins coming together with their fair weather family in terms of, well, the cockatoo and the toucan, who, as I say, carry the dodo. There's an island shown on the map, and by God, it's isn't it just Mauritius? So as I say, these are not just off the wall connections. And if you have one of the biggest corporations in the world in terms of Google doing a 4-day sort of festive treasure hunt almost, well, you might say sit up and take significance, or to, attach some significance to it in some sense. Oh, Nominam, how you doing, man? How you doing? I can send you the link. I suppose I can go to your channel and just post it in your YouTube, right? Yeah, no problem doing that. So I won't spoil the surprise then. If okay, yeah, that should be okay. If I go to your about, I won't spoil the surprise because it's, again, it's something I have not considered, and now that I consider it, it's sort of fitting to behold. Let me just see if I can post that immediately to. Just go down a different route. Yeah, there you go. Okay, man. Message has been sent, so just feel free to join at any time. Just impromptu chat. In the meantime, let me just take a flick back to, I'll just finish that up, because if you do, when you do come in, then you can give a little comment yourself on.
Hello.
Oh, how you doing, man? That was quick. That was quick. How you doing, Nami?
Good.
Yeah, welcome, man. Welcome to the Dodo's the Dodo's Den. I just have before you if you'll be so kind to go into that brilliant piece of potential anyway, just a sort of a little more expansive comment on this comparison here. It's been on my mind for a while. You claim to have met who you think is the man behind the Eric Dubé disguise, I suppose. As you look at this here, is there anything coming through at you as you look at this?
I see it. I mean, like I say, I can understand people's reluctance to. I understand why people might not see it, but I see that I think that if you cover, if you just look at the face in kind of sections, like the bottom half particularly is a really good fit. And then actually, when I look at it, I feel like, well, maybe I should share my screen and I can, hold on, let me just do something for a second and I can show you what I'm perceiving about this photo.
Yeah, excellent, man. You're much more efficient. So let me stop my...
Yeah, I just screenshotted your image, so now I'll share my screen.
Oh, excellent. Brilliant. Do I have to do anything here now?
No. Excellent. I'll just do what I'm going to do. So I'm sharing my screen. You see my screen?
I do, yeah. I can present that to everyone, I guess, can't I?
Right. So what I'm seeing in this photo is that one thing that I've really noticed, or one thing to take into consideration, is that these photos of actors and celebrities are always digitally edited and photoshopped.
Yeah.
just to make them look better and more consistent, right? But like this nose area to me looks like it's been, I don't know. It looked like, see this like highlight under this
Yeah.
nostril?
I see that well. I do.
That doesn't look, there's something off about that to me. So to me, it looks like this nose area has been edited. The photo of Eric Dubai looks more naturalistic to me.
Mm.
Like, looks more like candid, and actually looks more like the guy who I met, who I think might be him. But yeah, I don't know. I see this as, I think this is pretty strong. Like I say, I'm not going to say it with 100% certainty, but I think that I really see what the
Yeah, there are
what's the guy on the left's name?
there are grounds, and you know, again, people might fail to understand that just a slight touch here and there,
Mm-hmm.
slight alteration, and I guess first and foremost, the idea can be in your mind, so you're not sort of consciously making that comparison in the first place. But yeah, slight alteration here and there can make all the difference.
Yeah.
You take into account other information as well. Then, when we have the similarities in the names, how one disappeared mysteriously, it's all sort of supportive evidence, and it's something that has to be considered. I didn't like the reception by D and Des on the other channel because you have to give this stuff time. You have to understand that if there was deception at play, it's going to take more than just an initial glance to get a full grasp on the
Yeah.
possibility. Now, if you prove it to yourself that it's not the case, that's fine. You can move on. Don't ridicule people for holding to a position. And again, the fact that this has potential makes their reaction more suspicious to me. So I have to say I appreciate that anyway.
Well, to me, their react like the one guy. It's like I can I think that if somebody says honestly, I don't see the resemblance. Okay, that's fair, right? But he was like, absolutely 100% no way, and I'm like, how can you?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, it's too. That's even if you thought it was highly unlikely to say it with 100% certainty is just too certain.
It
Like,
is, and especially without due consideration as well.
yeah.
And you're going. It's the exact same reaction we got with your comparison now, Nami. If you
Much
want to,
stronger. Yeah. But yeah, when I'm looking, like, I just want to say, like, is my screen's still sharing here? Yeah, right.
yeah, yeah,
That look at this. This lip has been edited here. This area of the photo has, like, see these like highlights.
mm,
It's just like you can just tell that this area has been touched
right,
up significantly, because there shouldn't be, like, if there's shadow under his nose here, why is there highlights along the nostril?
yeah. You can definitely
And then this
see.
is too bright here on the top of the lip. There's just little things like that. And then, I would also recommend, like, I mean, this is obviously just my screenshot of whatever this photo is, which is someone else's edited version of the original photo. But if you can find this original photo, I recommend that people go to this, use this website. It's called Forensically, and 29a.ch/photo-forensics. See that? You can do, this is a really good resource for doing forensic photo analysis. Like, there's a tutorial video on YouTube that explains how to use these tools. But, a lot of, like, this will help you find a lot of what's wrong with these photos. And it's a very reliable tool. Like, you can look into, like, don't take my word for it, do your research, but this is a very, very useful resource for people who are wanting to study photo evidence.
This is all we can do in many cases, right? I guess it's not something you should enter lightly because I think you're prone to having your whole worldview turned upside down. No greater an arena than the flat Earth arena to see actors everywhere, but of a different kind. You just won't believe it. And again, Nami, I had never considered the possibility. Just never entered my brain until you mentioned it tonight. And when you put up your own comparisons, almost immediately it's compelling. I'm sold, right? Because I know there's a greater sort of story going on. They needn't have had the two of these characters, let's say on your screen here, look so close alike. They needn't have engaged Neil, well, I'm not going to say it, the same man to play both parts, you know. So that tells me there's a different story going on. And almost, yeah, that story is waiting to be told or exposed, really, you know what I mean? So I think this is the time we're in now, you know.
Well, like I say, I'm working on a video about this topic now with a friend of mine, and we're going to put this out because I feel like this one does need to be put out. But can you see my screen here?
1 sec. Yes, there you go.
There you go. So that's the first man in space, Neil Armstrong, and I mean the first man on the moon, Neil Armstrong, and the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin, who bear a remarkably striking resemblance to each other. And yeah, you know, there's a lot of little things, like see this little line here, that line coming down, like it. I mean, their facial expression is a little bit different, but then, like I say, you can see that this nose has been edited. It's almost like these photos have been edited to make them resemble each other less, because, like, you see how that's just kind of bungled up there?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Like a shiny nose. You take it that the left one is unaltered, right? Neil Armstrong.
No, the left one does. It's this weird shadow doesn't
Oh,
work.
sorry. Yeah, we talked about that earlier on. Okay.
Yeah, and then you know, I did a forensic analysis of that.
Yeah.
And which, hold on, let me see if I can find it.
The ears are remarkably similar from just glancing from one to the other. It's uncanny, isn't it? And when you look at the teeth, look at the angle backwards the teeth make. I mean, this is a peculiar feature in the first place, but the fact that they're both involved in what we know now to be hoaxes, you know, you can't orbit an Earth that is flat, right? In the sense that they tell it.
Well, like I was saying, if you accept the moon landing is fake, then Neil Armstrong is ostensibly an actor.
Yes,
he has to be, right?
So same with Gagarin. Same with Gagarin.
And here's one that I did by splitting, I just, you know, I didn't do this. I could have done this more carefully, but I just sort of crudely cut these images together, and you can see that the proportionality is very the same. Like, see the chin line here?
Yeah.
I mean, they're different photos, but you can see that this fits together remarkably well. So, if anything, these men are wanted for crimes against the laws of probability, right?
I'll definitely take a closer look myself. On first glance, that is uncanny. Yeah. I mean, when you're taking into account possible alterations, what do you think the purpose of this mark on the back of Neil Armstrong, who passed away relatively recently, if I'm not mistaken? And also, if I remember, Clues Forum did a big piece, a thread about Yuri Gagarin and that whole sham. But he died. He's said to have died under mysterious circumstances as well. Another one of these cliffhangers, right?
Yeah. Well, it was said that like his body was basically completely obliterated in the crash. That only enough pieces of like obliterated flesh. There was just one piece of like flesh that they used to identify him that had like a mole or something like that. But his body was basically gone. So, and yeah, he died in mysterious circumstances.
Goodness. It's,
but,
you know,
but I was just saying also, like, people, like, often, you know, just say, you know, separate from flat Earth, but one of the main arguments that people will bring up against the idea that the moon landing was a hoax is that they're like, oh, the Russians would have said that it was a hoax, you know, like that there was this Cold War and that they were enemies with the United States. But this is like the original Russian collusion, right? And it also kind of speaks to the fact that people talk about how many people would have had to have known about it. Well, if you want to keep that to a minimum, you just keep recycling the same people, right? So you use the same actor in Russia and in United States. And I think that that's what's happened here, because I just think what are the odds? Because it's not what are the odds that another guy might resemble Neil Armstrong. It's like, this is the first man on the moon and the first man in space. And what are the odds that that incredibly tiny world would have two guys that so resembled each other in the same era, right? Like,
exactly. Zil.
I would challenge anyone to find someone that resembles either of them as much as they do each other. I don't think you will. I really don't.
It's impossible. You're dealing in the realms of the impossible almost, you know, and especially when, you know, with hindsight, we know about the whole fakery nature to all of this. So it's obviously been scripted this way. So you're either dealing with you're either dealing with the same man, or else, well, you're dealing with a twin brother. That's possible as well, right? But it has to be something that up close and personal. And of course, all of this is consciously done. This makes me think, in one sense, and I mentioned this earlier on, that, you know, we were always meant to come by these realizations when we came to look at our home in a different sense, the flat Earth, and reject all the things associated with the ball Earth. Then we would come to see these. These, I guess, I was thinking, like, this is possibly very hilariously funny if we take a step back and maybe consider other possibilities in terms of a grander story. What do you think, Naomi?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that actually, if you think about it, or here's another photo where, you know, like, for instance, people will probably want to say, oh, that Gagarin had this scar, right? But this is the kind, to me, this looks like photo editing, and is also the kind of thing that they could have just used disguise techniques to create. But other, you know, beyond that, it's incredible, the resemblance. But that this could have been what Neil Armstrong was referring to when he was talking about peeling back one of truth's protective layers.
All right, right. I somehow think, yeah, he meant that in a completely greater significance.
Yeah,
and him playing an act, but yeah, for certain.
Or that's part of it, anyways, right? I mean, maybe one of truth's protective layers is the fake prosthetic skin that they wear. Right? I don't know. I'm just saying. Well, it does really fit. It just does fit really nicely into the narrative, in the sense that it's like, you know, that idea, like, if you just accept what's stated by the official government narrative, that, yeah, there is a big problem with this Russia. Like, it does seem like the other competing space program would have had an incentive to rat out the moon landing, but obviously the moon landing is fake. I mean, I don't think there's many, you know, regardless of whether you think Neil Armstrong and Yuri Gagarin, I'm assuming that most intelligent people who might be in the chat or in the audience are going to understand that the moon landing was fake. I mean, even a lot of people who aren't flat earthers understand that the moon landing was fake, right? I understood the moon landing was fake like 15 years before I ever even considered that the Earth was flat.
You just talked about probabilities. I mean, you know, in this arena, you can have certain arguments with the ball Earth adherents, and they can present a reasonable argument. It's only in terms of probabilities you realize that they're all acting a part, because it's impossible for them all to be on board the moon landings and be on board 9/11 official story and be on board the globe Earth, all in a fell swoop, you know, all acting together in unison. That's impossible for any honest investigators, you know, so that sort of gives the game away. But yeah, I think in one sense it's all about us. This is what Flat Earth does, Nami. It sort of gets us, of course, to relook at pretty much everything, our whole existence, and the backdrop against which we are judging everything. And I think people know the story. I think in one sense the future is more set than the past, and all of this is playing or has its part to play within some greater, as to this point, unknown narrative to us, but it's not unknown to others.
Well, you know, if we, like we were talking about earlier, like if we just try to take a more charitable view of, say, the globe Earth deception, right? Like, I'm not saying like this is the ultimate way of looking at it, but I'm saying, like, if we try to take a more charitable view of it, that it could be something like, the deception is almost like a labyrinth that we need to solve, because if they just presented us with the truth that the earth was flat, then we would believe it for the wrong reasons, just like we believe that the earth was a globe for the wrong reasons, right? So by creating this obstacle of a deception and then forcing people to go against the grain of mainstream thought and a kind of institutional authoritarian truth, that at least when we arrive at our conclusions, we'll have earned them, and we'll believe things for the right reasons, not just because the priesthood said so or the government said so.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I've had plenty of hangouts at this stage, but I've talked a lot about how there is a different trail laid for us all to uncover, first of all, and to make our way towards and intimately connected with flat Earth. And this is where this is sort of a central point. I mean, for the first time, we're on solid ground. It's still an unknown, vast territory, but yeah, we can now rely on our senses, rely on our intellect, and understand that nothing is like we held our whole lives. Now we're on solid ground, as I say, for the first time, and we can take our step forwards from there. Yeah, but who's to say how it was written? We know nothing about the past when it comes down to it, and fundamentally, I think we know nothing about ourselves. And this is as much an inward journey as it is an outward journey. But I agree, if we take a softer approach in one sense, more understanding approach, and realize there's so much we don't know, and a rush to judgment will generally sort of smarts. So yeah, we live in amazing times, man. That's an amazing comparison. I'll certainly bring up my own pictures and see if there's any more not convincing, conclusive sort of matching points. You know what I mean? That's what everyone should be doing. I don't suggest you kind of spend or get overly engrossed in it, because again, you'll find actors everywhere, and then you won't know which way to turn. Can I just ask you about a comparison I've been thinking about? I mentioned this in the other channel as well. I have a good picture here by way of comparison. And as I say, it's not just one piece of evidence as well. It's accumulation of different facts or different points of information that will collate and build a bigger story for you yourself, the individual. At some point, you will make the call yourself, right? So, for instance, you started investigating Neil Armstrong, Yuri Gagarin, and you, after what, a day, 2 days, well, however long, you said, right, after this point, it's gone beyond any chance of probability, and it has to be the case. So we have to settle in our own journeys. We have to sort of settle on these probabilities at some point. But here's the comparison. And very strange. And again, this is not the best. What do you call it? Clarity, but it's good enough to give you the idea that, with a little bit of manipulation, it could be one and the same. What I think the glaring points are here. Now, this is, remember as well, the two most famous black men on earth, really, and definitely in America. They're supposed to be friends. One is supposed to have supported the campaign of the other, but there's not one picture of the both of them together. They've done an interview together. Not one. They've done an interview together, Nami, in the same room apparently, but the camera just kept going from one to the other. Obama making these subtle jokes about Will Smith playing him in a movie. But just by way of facial comparison here, look at the teeth, first of all. Remarkable similarity between the teeth. And I know you're going to say, not you, Nami, but people are going to say, well, come on, this is not uncommon. People have similar teeth. Well, that goes up to a certain point. We're dealing with, again, two famous men, and the chances are, like Nami was saying, the chances alone on these two men looking similar, and they're both involved in two hoaxes involving trips to space. That becomes very faint indeed. If you look at the ears, very, very similar up to a certain point, but Obama has these lobes. So when we zoom in on the lobe, can you see, look at how that sticks out here like a sore thumb, Nami? That little bit of extra padding, whatever you will, and always we can understand as well. It's clear in the ear, right? Our ear has blood vessels, so it's a very surface. So when you're just engaged in normal living, your ears are generally going to be red, or blood's going to be flowing well. If you have a prosthetic piece, it'll be sort of lacking that color, and you can see it here. Let me just get the pen so you can see it. I mean, I don't have to draw it in too much. You can just see it sort of going around like this.
Yeah.
It sort of looks unnatural. It looks like an addition. It's the same with the other side.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not like, I don't know. I think you'd want to do more comparisons than this.
Sure. This is
but I want to show you something interesting that I found that's not a comparison, but I think might just lend some. That's just an interesting point of evidence about.
Let me just finish on this. I just wanted your opinion in general. Look at the nose here. You see how the nose is very, very similar, and the hairline. I mean, I'm just trying to get you to point out, just to acknowledge that there is cause for this comparison, and even though it sounds strange and wacky, well, there are stranger things in our philosophies, right?
Yeah.
But, what do you think generally, just on first glance?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know. There's things about it that I don't necessarily find it to be incredibly compelling, but I would want to see more comparison photos. I think you might want to continue to try to compare from some.
I know. To develop it further. Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's impossible. I'm not. Yeah, I don't know. That's my position on it. I'm not.
No, that's cool, man. That's cool.
I want to show you another one of Obama that I found that I think might be of interest to you if you're looking into this, which is okay. This photo, which to me shows that is evidence that Obama is wearing a facial prosthetic. See this area?
Right.
Because what this looks like, just knowing a little bit about the prosthetic makeup that they use in Hollywood, is that he's wearing a piece that it kind of fits like this, and that it's broken.
That's exactly what I've said.
It's broken. That's right
exactly
here.
What I've been saying.
It's see, this doesn't happen to normal flesh.
No.
Right?
No, it crinkles up, man. There's a crinkling up there, isn't there?
No, there's this weird, what this really looks like, because I actually asked a person who works in special effects makeup, and they're like, yeah, it looks like it broke.
I can see it. You can see the line going up his cheek. That's exactly what I've been saying. I said
there's an elasticity of this piece.
Yes.
It's like a thin area here where it
now
joins.
Peel that off in your brain. I'm just after peeling that off in my brain, and I can see fucking Will Smith behind it.
Yeah, no, it very well could be like that. I think the world of these actors is very small, so the probability is.
I can see it though. I can see it, man. I can see it.
I do think that this photo is pretty good evidence that Obama is wearing prosthetics.
Excellent. So there is no Obama. This is the point. Obama and Osama was given to us.
All the presidents, all world politicians, all of them. There's none of them are real. They're all actors, in my opinion.
Amazing, man. I can peel that away now, and I can even see where it's sort of joined to his face, and it's always up and around the nose as well. And you can even see it around the nose. Can you see it? Point out around the nose where you have that discoloration towards the middle.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, this here, what the question about this photo is, what else would explain what's going on here? This isn't normal. If he had some sort of incredible, I don't know, I've never seen any scar tissue that looked like that, but if he did have some very strange scar underneath the skin or some sort of broken fascia or something, you'd see it in other photos. This is just really weird what we're seeing here.
Is that from a video?
No, this is from a still photo that I found on the internet probably over a year ago. I just saved it in my files. But I just thought that might be of interest to you to see that.
That's brilliant, man. That's brilliant, because this is how I think it's done. Remember I was talking earlier on, think about balloon thickness rubber. And been applied with super glue or whatever, and made up over. The thing is, you wouldn't have that flexibility. It wouldn't move with every muscle motion. You know what I mean? There would always be that unnatural tint to it.
Yeah.
But that's exactly that peel of skin over fake skin over up around the cheekbones, over the nose, and down around the other side.
Yeah. Well,
That's good enough. I've seen Patricia Steer. I've identified but Patricia Steer wears as well. So
I'll send you. What I'll do is I'll post some. I'll just post for you to watch. Like I've got a playlist of a bunch of videos that deal with prosthetic disguises, where you can just see how it's done. It really helps to understand what you're looking at, right? If you can just become familiar with the process, and also some videos where they talk about how that this technology was developed by the CIA.
Yeah.
And is there what they, like I'll post that one that I posted earlier just in case you didn't get a note of it, but oops. Where they're the guy, it's the head of the CIA's disguise.
Right. I didn't catch that earlier on. That's cool. I think I might have seen similar before.
Yeah. Well, if you just I'll just post a few of these things because each one of them sort of gives a different. Yeah, that one's called My Secret Life in the CIA. And what's another one?
Excellent. Now I'm going to post. This is great. Now that you brought up that, right? So let me.
Oh yeah, this one's really interesting too. The Faceman Mission, it's called, with Wolf Blitz.
I'll post them in chat in a second. So just on the back of the picture you posted there, Nami, take a look at this, right? This is as clear as I've ever seen, and the amount of resistance I've encountered because of this.
I see that. I see it.
Look at, you can't miss this shit, man. I mean, you know what I mean? It's so clear and obvious. Let me just go down to thinner layers. So this is what I think has been given us, you see. So if Obama, so here we see look at I have a beard, right? I have a beard. I can show my camera, no problem doing that. Never seen a beard to be cut off like this, right? It's just cut off at the center here. And here we have similar to the other side. Never seen that before in my life, right? It just doesn't happen in reality. You have a sort of an equal distribution of facial hair. But you can even see the flaps. Look at the flap of the skin here, the way it sort of crinkles up and around.
Oh, yeah.
Look how clumsily the bridge here, it just ends all of a sudden. And the same with the other side. You can even see it hanging over.
Yeah.
Right? So this is what I think they gave us. This is easy stuff to spot. So there's not a wild goose chase as such. So you peel off that layer. Then you have Obama. This is where the Obama-Osama conspiracy comes into it. It's almost given to us in a plate, right? But I think then the layer behind that, as you just showed there, there's a layer beneath Obama, and that's where I'm resting on Will Smith. Okay, I'm not presenting any great case or any great evidence. I just speak about it more in passing. And there's all this circumstantial evidence as well. As I say, the two most famous men, a black man on earth, support one another, met one another, did an interview together. There's no photographs of them together. Something else going on here.
I think that if you just keep, what I would suggest to you is to just open one window with pictures of Obama and one with Will Smith or Osama, and then just spend a long time, and you'll find and look carefully for pictures that are taken with the same lighting and angle, and then you could come up with a bunch of perspectives that might elucidate what you're trying to show there a little bit more clearly.
Yeah. Oh no, well, that's fine. I mean, I don't mind this. This is just in passing to me, right? I sort of focus.
I think that this stuff is very important. It's very important.
I know, and for me though, there's other important things. There's more important things.
It's all important if you want to understand.
Yeah.
The way that it's all every detail of what is true is going to be important to understanding the truth, right?
Sure.
And understanding how the media works and how the intelligence world works in collusion with Hollywood and the news media is really key, because they're the gatekeepers of all the information.
Yeah.
Also regarding the flat Earth and things like that, right? Because basically it's they're the, you know, like they're the people that whether people even, I mean, I think most people consider themselves to be critical thinkers, but they're expecting to find some sort of source within some kind of media realm to validate whatever their thoughts are, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're expecting to see whatever, you know, like they'll think that something's true when it shows up on the news, or when somebody that one of their respected heroes or figures from, whether it be the world of journalism or academia or politics, goes on television and says it. So that's how they really just control. It's mythic, you know, it's a mythic government, mythic authority.
Exactly, and people are, I suppose, waking up on many different fronts. For me, I'll quit this now. I don't need to go into that anymore. But that's just another indication that, yeah, definitely along the right tracks. I appreciate your picture there, Nami, because yeah, it shows that we are dealing with actors. These people are actors on a stage, and they're capable of playing many parts. That's why these movie stars are right there with us in the homes. You know what I mean? They're capable of taking on many different parts and looking very differently at times as well. If you think that this doesn't apply to the greater arena that we're in, well, you've only come to flat Earth, right? And you've realized that you've been deceived about the very nature of your home and your whole universe. So faking 9/11 or faking characters here or there, faking deaths, that's no problem, not a problem.
Well, I've seen from working in film that, like, I've seen like just actors who where they had to film scenes where they were supposed to be 30 or 40 years older, right? And just seeing how they come out with a, you know, Hollywood high, you know, it costs $3,000 or $4,000 for these prosthetics. It's not something that's within the normal purview of the average person. Like, this is just a Hollywood thing. It's just it's like a specialized area. People make careers out of this, doing this kind of makeup. It's very expensive, and it takes a lot of time. But I've seen people where they come out and they look like an older version of themselves, and it's like shocking. Like, it's fully you know, like when it's not, it would fool you on the street if you didn't realize what was going on, right? So it's like the ability to disguise human beings using prosthetic makeup is very, very sophisticated. And so you can't discount that as a possible means of course, it's a means of deception. You know that the deceivers are going to be exploiting it to maximum effect, right? Like every kind of illusionism and every kind of strategic advantage that they can take, they're going to take. Anyways, it's also well known that that's one of the CIA's main methods. Like, it's admitted if anybody wants to look it up from the audience, look up the Face Man mission. So it basically explains that the entire field of facial prosthetic appliances was developed and pioneered by people in the intelligence community, in the CIA in particular, and that it was also closely intertwined with the world of Hollywood special effects the whole time. Because the truth is that the CIA was created to control the media. Like, that's what they exist for, right? Like, people have this impression from movies and the news that they're infiltrating terrorist groups and things like that, but they are the terrorist groups.
Yeah.
And
the ultimate irony, right? The ultimate irony. You mentioned, prosthetics. Michael Jackson was famous for, you know, spending hours, and he's made videos about him being made up. And that's what first came to mind in terms of just how prevalent this is. And of course, it is a massive industry, so people do have very convincing variations made, alterations made to their natural look to transform them into someone else, right? And again, this is real world. These things are not beyond the realms of imagining. I just want to share this because Michael Jackson came to mind. This has sort of led me on my own pathway as well, Nami, but you should know, at least not you, but one should know by now, Michael Jackson's death was faked.
Yeah,
absolutely. Just put it to you front and center that he was faked. But this is an interesting little link I found. And let me just read it quickly. It says the Five Alive dodo bird has been a major talk online as well as Facebook and Twitter. I don't know anything about this. It's just a link that came my way. It says the dodo has some weird posts and tweets that really made me and the rest of the world wonder. I noticed most of the fans have an inkling of this being Michael Jackson, right? The dodo seems to be very talkative with one member of the fan page, Dan Barrett, who also have 3 Facebook pages himself. Is he actually friends with the dodo? MJ would put both the Facebook posts and tweets. This is just some guy writing a blog or whatever, but he points out these pieces of information. This Five Alive dodo, apparently in whatever scene, maybe the dancing scene, quite a controversial figure. But yeah, this association with Michael Jackson was made, and isn't it so very interesting that first of all, the vast majority of the world thinks the man is dead. The conspiracy-minded people, if you put your time in, know that he's not dead. So the fact that he comes back in form, possibly of the dodo, with all these little clues as well, I think is an amazing sort of coincidence, if you want to call it that. But we know that there are no coincidences. So that's my point. That just came to mind when you mentioned the prosthetics for one of his. Yeah. Definitely more than one of his music videos. Of course, Thriller was famous when he came out, first of all, for the prosthetics involved in that. So yeah, we have to be able to distinguish between reality and the movies, right? And see that there's not too much of a distinction at all.
Well, I think it's just don't take anything for granted that you're seeing on the screen. The level of computer generated effects is very, very sophisticated. It can fool you. Look at movies like, The Matrix, that was made in what was it, 2002 or something?
Before that, 1997, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's just the level that what they're able to create in terms of 3D graphics when you have a government level budget at your disposal, or a Hollywood level budget at your disposal, is very sophisticated. People seem to have a hard time grasping that, that they think, oh, people wouldn't go to for instance, remember when I was having that, when I was doing that series of chats with Anthony Riley regarding Soundly, and people are like, oh, it's just ridiculous. Who would ever go to the trouble of doing the CGI? And I'm like, people who are working for the intelligence community. And not only are they fooling you, but they're also seeing how fooled you're willing to be, and they're testing people's reactions to using this technology, which has become a lot easier for them to use.
Just to get a fresh perspective on things, you can see here in the background, you have a picture of Michael Jackson, then you have a dodo in the foreground. So this character has left lots of little subtle clues like this, a dodo next to the Jackson.
Wait, so where are these photos from? Who made this?
This is, again, a Five Alive dodo bird. And the suspicions were that this Five Alive dodo bird was actually Michael Jackson, whose death had been faked, and he was leaving clues to the people who had been following the clues.
So this has nothing to do with your use of the dodo bird?
It has everything to do with it.
Oh, okay.
Everything.
So it's referring to you?
No, not referring to me, but referring to the dodo and the significance of the dodo. I mean,
okay, I'm just saying that you didn't, this person wasn't commenting on your work.
Oh, no.
Okay, so you just stumbled across this, and then you
made the connection.
You have this kind of you have this ongoing relationship with the symbolism of the dodo bird that you've been exploring.
Right. And this is the flat Earth is the greatest story of our lives. So when we're presented with the map of the flat Earth in terms of the Gleason's map, well, if you flip it upside down, so Australia's at the bottom, then you have a dodo bird. That's your starting point. But the fact that Michael Jackson here, if you've been following the clues, it's not too difficult to work out that he faked his death. So there's a greater story been told. He comes back as the dodo bird, pointing us in a certain direction, which would be meaningless to the vast majority of people, right? Only when you realize that Michael Jackson was a flat earther himself, of course, as all of them are. They all know me. When I said they, it's well known that the Earth is flat and stationary. It's common amongst millions, I'm sure, at this stage. You know what I mean? It's not something that Fool on the Hill, for instance, a flat earth song.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is nothing new. But what this does tell me is that there is a greater picture. There is a greater story to be told. And if you're following the clues, well, your story doesn't just end when you come to flat and stationary Earth, right? It continues on
Yeah.
afterwards. And this is what we have to realize. We have to separate fact from fiction and realize what it has in general presented us as fact needs flipping over 180 degrees, and then you know, or sorry, that's fiction. Yeah, flipping over 180 degrees, and then you'll find fact, and vice
Yeah.
versa. And these are all the tools we need to start acquiring, and not just in flat Earth relation, in relation to everything. We have to ask the important questions, the basic questions, and it's only when you ask the questions, well, can you hope to get any answers, right? But you have to be aware that there's a pathway already laid for you, so you have to be aware of the pitfalls. But I think ultimately there is a greater story to be told. And well, certainly for me, it's the dodo is front and center into it. And for all flat earthers, the dodo is front and center because we were fed with the Gleason's map, right? And again,
Yeah.
when you rotate that, there you have the dodo. It's the same with the UN map. I've decoded the UN map in the sense that you have two olive branches skirting the outside. When you break apart the olive branches, you have I love, first of all, anagram of olive. But you notice that the male symbol is a up pointing arrow, and the female symbol is a down pointing arrow. So what you need to do is to rotate one arrow or one branch, olive branch, so it overlaps the other, and then you have the perfect harmony of male and female. When you do that, the UN map, you can picture it rotating around like a sort of a combination lock, and then at the end, when Australia's at the bottom, a picture pops out, and that's the dodo, and then you take it from there. So this is the way this. It's not even. I know that this is the way a greater story is being told to us. But a fundamental, as I mentioned earlier on, fundamental sort of central point is arriving at flat Earth realization.
Yeah,
And
it
then
says, I'm reading the Wikipedia, and it says the dodo achieved widespread recognition from its role in the story of Alice's adventures in Wonderland. And that seems to come up a lot. That seems to come up again and again as being an allegory of the situation that we've been put in by the secret societies.
You say you're in TV. I found a missing treasure, Nami, that has been missing for 160 years, and I've often spoken about the significance of Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass.
Yeah.
First of all, the Bible is number one, the works of Shakespeare number two, but then Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through Looking Glass, number three in terms of books most widely translated earthwide.
Yeah.
Right. So in one real sense, Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through Looking Glass becomes the most important book because the other two are a collection of many books, right?
Yeah.
So there's been a treasure that's been missing since the book. Again, this is all part of the narrative. Lewis Carroll didn't exist, and the story has been told through the writings. But the treasure that was missing was the original wood engraving for Alice in Wonderland. So there was 90, just briefly, there was 92, as the story goes, there was 92 wood engraving blocks printed for the illustrations, right? When the numbers needed to be made up, they transferred the engravings to metal blocks. But what happened was some of the clarity was lost. Again, this is all according to the narrative. So the wooden blocks were then lost. All the subsequent illustrations came from the metal blocks. And eventually, so this is the story, eventually 91 of the 92 blocks were found, but one was missing. So the upshot of it was that all of the rest of the illustrations that we see in use now come from the original blocks that were refound, the wood blocks, except one was lost. So that's the treasure that's missing, and it turns out that I found it. Now, would you want me to show you that? I can show you that.
Sure. You actually found it personally.
Yeah. I found it's amazing story. And again, this is the most important. The way I look at it, it's the most important book ever written. And hang on, where did I find that now? So let me just show you I'll show you first of all where, and this is just a tiny part of the story. There's so much more beyond this I've talked about as well. But this in itself is a substantial treasure to find. I didn't even know it was missing, but yeah, here we go. So let me, if you haven't seen this, you're in for a treat. Hopefully you can see my screen now when I just share in a second. Okay. Right. And I'll just quickly go through the...
I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing your screen.
You should be seeing me now.
Oh yeah, okay, there. Yeah, I see it now.
Okay.
Hold on,
So
I'm just gonna, I just need to take, 60 seconds.
Yeah, you take your time, man. Don't worry about it.
I have to step away for a second.
Yeah, no worries. Take your time. Okay, so the link I'm bringing up, just for anyone listening, is In Focus, Sir John Tenniel and the Alice Wood engravings. A much deeper story, so I'm just focusing on the point where the wood engraving block was lost. So I'm going to show to Nummi, and she can understand and maybe get a grasp on exactly what the treasure is, what it relates to, and how indeed it is a treasure in the first place, and what a treasure it is, right? Once you see the comparison, or once you see the difference, I can bring up the other one. Let me, while he's away, bring up the other link. Oh yeah, there we go.
Oh yeah, okay, so there's the dodo.
Okay, well, let me just, before I skip over to that, let me just give you the prequel and tell you what the quest is in the first place. Now, none of this is true, right? None of this is all just part of a narrative. It's part of a trail that's set for you. Don't you understand? John Tenniel never existed to do the illustration. Someone else did it. This is all a great work credited to a sock, if you will. The point. Let me get to the point of it. All of these illustrations are original, and you feel free to go through this at your own pace. Let me get to the upshot. And as I say, this is not just... I've been thinking about it. This is not just like the Beatles treasure. This goes beyond the Beatles. The Beatles refer you to Alice in Wonderland, Alice Through Looking Glass. So here we go. So just to get to the point, eventually, and despite Carl's insinuations, Tenniel completed 92 images to accompany both the author's texts, drawn directly onto their boxwood printing blocks. So involved was the artist with the project that upon its momentous completion, he seemed drained of further inspiration. Tenniel undertook almost no work in the subsequent years. So, it's like a Brian Mullen. He blasts onto the scene, he produces some great work, and then he pisses off and leaves us with a greater puzzle. So yeah, this Tenniel didn't exist, and yeah, this is all part of the narrative again. So
and then you get 93, right, which is a major occult number.
Right, man. It's all over the place. And even his name is John Tenniel, J Tenniel. J is 10 itself.
Yeah.
And Tenniel, 10 is 10.
Yeah.
And it is X and XX.
Well, 93
I was talking about
is all over space, right? It's like 93 million miles to the sun. The universe is supposed to be 93 billion light years in diameter. It's like that number. It's like 93, like Halley's Comet or something, I think it travels like 93 astronomical units. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of there's an amazing amount of these coincidences. 93.
There certainly is. Ultimately, I think it goes back to 666 and the sun. That's what the sun is about. We take away all these scare. You're told that Aleister Crowley is the most wickedest man in the earth. There's sort of scare tactics to take you away, frighten you away from maybe asking the deeper questions. And when you look into it, then you see Aleister Crowley's students all were made, as the story goes, all were made to study Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through Looking Glass intimately before they sort of progressed. When you think of Aleister Crowley, his name itself, Alice Star Crowley. It's all pointing us in the same direction. So let me get to the treasure anyway, right? So here we go. So fine were Tenniel's lines, however, that the engravers feared the blocks would deteriorate. So these are the initial 92 blocks, right, from the artwork of the most famous book probably ever written, right, in terms of its uniqueness on its own. So here's the story that the engravers feared the blocks would deteriorate before the large-scale printing of the books had been completed. They advised and said that these should act as the masters from which electrotype copies could be produced. These metal blocks would withstand greater numbers of printing runs, but a subsequent loss of definition and tone. Here's the important part, right?
Yeah.
So we understand that. And you'll have an appreciation for graphics. So here we have the dodo now. So let me just read before I do that. Exactly what happened to the original blocks in the decades between their casting and eventual rediscovery remains a mystery. Fortuitously, they appear to have been closely guarded, even to the point of relocating the blocks from London to a Suffolk print atelier throughout the Second World War, avoiding their potential destruction in the bombing runs of the Blitz. Of the original 92 wood blocks, only one has been lost, Alice and the Dodo, right? So the sole illustration of this later set to have been produced from the surviving electrotype copy. How apt that it was the Dodo of all the characters in Carl's menagerie that was destined to disappear. Now we understand that Lewis Carroll, his name was Charles Dodgson, but he was said to have a stammer, so his name is often pronounced Charles Dodgson. Of all the characters he created, he was said to relate to the dodo the most, right? So there's something deeper being told us here. So of all the ones that, yeah, we don't need to read the rest of it because it's just a little more detail. So that's the point that, and there's so much information in the rest of it as well. Again, it's all encoded. So the point is, all the rest of the original artwork blocks were recovered except one. That's the dodo. So any printing you see of the dodo will contain this degraded copy. Now, if you look underneath the dodo's wing, let me just zoom in slightly. If you look underneath the dodo's wing,
got hands.
You can see, well, yeah, forget about the hands, just beneath, right? I'm used to looking at this now, so it's clear as day to me, and I can skip between pictures. You can see the swoop here. This is an eye, right? This is an eye. This is the beginnings of a nose. This is the beginnings of a mouth. Now, you're not going to be able to see that too clearly. You should get a little grasp in it. So here's the point. Here's where I have relocated the treasure, the last block, and you'll see why it isn't treasure indeed. But I guess you'll have to understand a little bit deeper how Paul McCartney and the Beatles connect to the dodo, and how indeed once you find a treasure, that's sort of the beginning of the next step, you know. So if we look at that here, we can see the beginnings of a face. Now, if I go to
the dodo hands Alice. Is that a hit of acid?
What?
He's handing her something.
He's handing her a thimble. He's handing her a thimble.
Oh, all right.
Which is very significant in itself. But as you notice, the hands are emerging from the wing. Now,
which suggests that he's wearing a costumed person, right?
No, it's much deeper. Remember the Gleason's map, and if you flip it so Australia's at the bottom, then you have pretty much a map of the Earth, right? The dodo represents the face of the flat Earth. This is how it's written, but the Gleason's map isn't correct. That's your starting point. When you get to flat Earth, the dodo awaits. So you're supposed to flip it around, look and see, well, that looks like a dodo to me, and then you go delving into the whole history.
Like, how do you mean? Like, I don't quite understand that.
Okay.
But the dodo looks like the Earth. Like, so, like, what do you mean? You're gonna have to explain that.
Okay, the dodo never existed, right? If you just bring up a Gleason's map yourself on your own screen, Nomi, and just rotate it so Australia is at the bottom, and you'll see a picture jumps out at you. It's a dodo, and that's your starting point. That's when you realize, hang on, that looks like a dodo. Let me look into the dodo. Then you look into the dodo story, and you find ultimately that it never existed. So it's part and parcel of this greater story that's been told. So the dodo represents the face of the flat Earth post inundation. So you have. So
if I look at the dodo map with Australia at the top or the bottom?
Australia at the bottom.
Okay.
Let me go anyway. So this is this print here, and every other print you will see is using the degraded metal block. So just look under the wing for a second. You'll see the beginnings of a face. Now, when I started reading, the very first time I started reading Alice in Wonderland on the channel, it was after realizing the dodo was the face of the dodo was the dodo was on the Gleason's map, right? So I said, I'm going to read Alice in Wonderland just to see if there's any more clues. This is the first link I came to, Sabian.org. And as I zoomed in, as you zoom in here we see same picture, the same caption. All of the rest of the artists or the illustrations are of the same quality as the rest. But here underneath the dodo's wing, you see something quite different, right?
Yeah.
So you see, here's the original block. Here you have the more detailed, clarified imagery, and indeed you can see a face there. And this is actually, well, this has gone back ages, but I mean, we talk about it enough. This is the face of Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney is the dodo. He's the fool on the hill. And the solution to the Beatles puzzle is Paul, the walrus is Paul, but the walrus is a walrus moustache. That's actually a walrus moustache underneath the chin, underneath the nose of Paul, pointing up towards the north wing center, where the hidden hands emerge from. That takes us on to different areas, and that's further on in the investigation. But this is the hidden treasure. This has been missing for 160 years, and if not beyond. That story connects to the very beginning of our experiences here in this broken system, and that is intimately connected with the dodo. If you just look at the dodo itself, you can just possibly imagine the tip of South America, wrapping up around Mexico, in and around North America, over and around Asia, India, the Middle East, Africa, down here somewhere, and back and around then to North America. This is generally the idea. And yeah, Paul, you can see clearly there's the face here. Let me just skip back to the other face. You can see that even though there's the hints of it being there, it's not quite finished. So this is the narrative put together. This is the missing treasure found, and yeah, it's all, of course, intimately connected with flat Earth. The fact that I found it on the first guess, I just decided to read Alice in Wonderland, typed it into Google, so it came up on the first page, and this is the first link I picked, and yeah, that's a treasure found. It's a very valuable treasure indeed, because when you think of the Beatles as being the most famous band in the history of Earth, right? And their whole raison d'etre was to get us involved, tell us a story about our flat Earth and, well, and beyond, because indeed the dodo is the sort of the central hub, and that tells you in one sense about the story without, right? So we live in a flat Earth. This is roughly the face of the Earth as it sticks out over the waters. Now there's a great story within to be told. And while dodo has led me on to Behemoth, Behemoth is not what you think. Behemoth is within you, that power within you. Paul McCartney went on to, after the Beatles were broken up, again, this is all just a narrative, he went on to create the band Wings, right? And one of the songs from Wings was Back in the USSR. Now, if you look at my avatar.
Oh, yeah. Well, that ties back to the Gagarin Armstrong thing, right?
Right. If you let me just stop sharing a second and show you, let me point out my avatar.
Back in the USSR, you don't know how lucky you are.
Can you see my avatar coming up on screen? If you look at the back of the dodo, right, and I've been through this in Paint, you can actually see 4 letters on the back of the dodo, USSR. Now, the dodo is Paul. This, where it says USSR, that's exactly where I say that Alaska connects with Russia. So on the flat of the map of the flat Earth, this is exactly where the USSR would be. So that's where we've sort of come along to. But it's all about conditioning as well. The minute you hear the word dodo, you're sort of inclined to laugh, right? You're inclined to giggle to yourself. And we've been set up to think like that. Everything is reversed in this Earth, and there's a different language that awaits to be sort of spoken, I guess, or understood just beneath the surface. And, well, it's intimately connected with the flat Earth, so.
There's also this thing, like what you're saying about the walrus in that song, right? He also says, "I'm the Eggman." And that,
right, and that whole album, Sergeant Pepper's, is it's all about pointing you to Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, but this also is where, like, did you ever watch that TV series Under the Dome?
No, man, I didn't. I don't watch too much TV, but was it insightful? Did you get many?
Well, I only watched it because it seems like it's clearly got some allegorical connection with flat Earth
Yeah,
stuff, right? Like they're under a dome, and
people have been
sort of
bombarded in general.
it's
You know,
not that really not that great of a show, but it's worth
it's put the
watching. And
idea.
maybe the first season is pretty worth watching in terms of that. There's
Yeah,
a lot of references to sort of like esoteric truths about flat Earth, but one of the things is that the flat Earth actually, or the dome, is actually caused by this egg, this cosmic egg
mm.
that fell to Earth at a different time and had absorbed the souls of people.
Oh
So
man, I mean,
it kind of just connects, like, but but also like the egg symbolism in Freemasonry, right? And this in this
yeah,
show, it's a black egg, and it's kind of like the ties to the black mirror or the lapis negris, the missing black stone that was in the Forum of Rome. That is, that some people think is actually that the black stone that is found, that is at the Hajj, you know, where Muslims make their pilgrimage in
right,
Mecca.
right,
There's a
right.
black stone on the side.
Mm.
Have you ever seen that?
I have indeed. Yeah, I have indeed. Martin Leakey did a video about that recently.
There's a number of researchers have proposed that that is a that black stone is actually the missing lapis negris, and that other people have said that it's fragments of some sort of meteor, and that it's not the actual chemical nature of this mineral is not known. I don't know. I'm not really explaining it well because I can't remember all the different things that I've read about it, but it's worth looking into in that
Mm.
sense.
I suppose this is the problem with such an ease of flow of information. Everything becomes possible, and it's difficult to know where to settle. One thing I have been advising people is to sort of simplify everything. And one thing I am realizing as well is the greater story applies to you. It applies to you. Everything that's happening applies to you. There's an external story and an internal story. And in one sense, that black stone, I thought immediately of the pineal gland, and that's a central sort of point as well. You know, within lots of esoteric symbolism, and yeah, it's very interesting. I've talked about the high as well, the Holy Spirit. So if you get an E and a backwards E and bring them together, one representing left brain, right brain, or the masculine and feminine side. If you bring them together, right, and then you spear it. So we have Shakespeare, we have Rothschild, or you know, the sort of the shield holders.
Yeah.
But if you spear it, then you get the Windows logo, right? Get the Windows logo. Now, if you take the Windows logo apart, you have the I and the H. The solution for Alice's riddle, the White Queen, before Alice received her crown, remember, Alice is all of us. Before Alice received her crown, the solution to the riddle that White Queen posed was oyster, right? The shellfish with the pearl. We'll remember in 9/11, they said, the PNAC said, what's called for is a new Pearl Harbor. Well, if you understand that 9/11 was faked and there was no deaths, then you can go back and look at Pearl Harbor again and see that that's exactly the same thing. But we think about a pearl and associate that with an oyster. But an oyster is an I star, right? So if you look in your keyboard, I star, the star is under the 8. So it's I8, or 8 is the H as well. So it's IH. So pretty much what it's telling you is you and the H, which is the theta, are intimately connected. In other words, it's your connection to the divine, if you will. And once we can understand that we are not body, we are much more than the body, but we're in a limited state, then we can come closer to being, I guess, what we were always meant to be. And the way I look upon this, Nami, is all of these different clues here. These span many, many years. You know what I mean? You won't find one of your favorite bands on a nationwide level that have not some reference to either directly to Sergeant Pepper's or Alice in Wonderland itself.
Yeah.
You know, it's the same story has been pushed. You're encouraged to look to it at every hand's turn. But yeah, that's what I'm finding. When you when you have the IH, the Windows logo, and three-dimensionalize it, you get a cube, right? With each face having the IH. But if you think about, it's a bit too. If you think about finding the very center of the cube and bringing all sides into the center, then this is what you have in terms of the body and the mind, or the body and the th. I don't say mind. The body,
Right.
it's that intimate connection between the driver and the vehicle being the body, the driver being our connection to the highest power.
Well,
Once we,
you know what? That reminds me of like what's the most famous cube on Earth, right? It's the Hajj.
right, exactly.
So it's like,
What I'm seeing now is it's an accept. Once we can accept, oh well, it's a bit sort of too long-winded to go into it, but it's all connected. But this IH, it's
it's not
a.
called the Hajj. What's it called? It's called the Kaaba. The Kaaba.
I know
Right?
what you're talking about, anyway, man,
Yeah,
and
it's a cube. It's the
yeah,
cube-shaped main temple of Islam that has the weird black egg-shaped thing on the side of it.
yeah,
Very
yeah.
strange.
And the Jews
Really
go
weird.
around with a cube. The Jews go around with a cube sticking out of their head as well, don't they? Either just right above where you find the pineal gland.
Right. And
So
then people
somehow,
say the cross is like a folded up, an unfolded
right,
cube.
right.
Right? Like the
So
Christian.
yeah. I think I'm grasping what's happening here. There's two dimensions. There's three dimensions, and the zero dimensions, right? So anything we base our firm reality on has three dimensions. You can keep cutting something up of solidity. An apple, for instance, you keep cutting it in half, and you're not going to be able to get a piece where there isn't a three-dimensional aspect to it, right? But then you think in other terms, like sound waves. These can't be measured in the same sense. These are zero dimensions, if you will, or frequencies and vibrations.
Yeah.
So this is, I think, ultimately what we are and what the TH references, this zero dimension. And when we combine the two, this is what we get. We get this cube, right? Each side has a. I have drawn it out, and I'm going to do a better job at drawing it out actually. But it's like a tesseract, right? So if you can imagine just looking directly at one face of the cube, it's just um, it's the Windows logo with the cross in the center. But the center point is going into the very center of the cube. You know what I mean? And it's the same for each face. So that combines the 3D with the 0D, if you will, and it's representative of, yeah, this intimate connection, this ultimate distinction between the body, and it's very difficult to know what terms to use, right? I don't like using the God within us or whatever like that, or
Well, maybe
it's all
there's no words for it. The only way to describe it is the relationship of these symbols, right?
right. And we can think about it. Look, if I want to scratch my arse, I can do it in milliseconds, right? We have this brain, we have this brain body interaction. Or I don't even like using brain because, but you know what I mean anyway. It's this ethereal force.
The
It's
mind.
whatever you want to
You have
call
a
it.
mind.
Yeah, its mind isn't even sufficient as well because it sort of goes more basic than that. But it is a difficult.
Well,
It's an
mind is better than brain, I think,
well,
because we don't really, I'm just saying, like, what encompasses the mind
it,
could be
right, right.
could
That's
transcend the functioning of the brain.
normally I use the term th, the theta.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So when I say it's the body and the theta, it's the bod, BODE, and the theta, and that's both. That's where we get the word both from.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of the two. And well, well, yeah. This is where the high comes in. It's the most basic greeting as well, but ultimately it's the IH. So there we have the solution to Alice in Wonderland, I star, I star with the pearl, right? And well, think about Stairway to Heaven, right?
Mhm.
So we have stair is an item of I star, way to heaven. I star is IH, so IH, way to heaven. I was thinking of a record label tonight by one of the ex-Beatle members, or not ex-Beatle, ex-Eagle members. As it was very interesting. His name, Behemoth's to be found within his name, but that's a different thing. But his record label was The Lost Highway. So we've all heard that term, The Lost Highway. Well, it's
There's a
HI
David Lynch
with
film
Lost.
called Lost Highway.
Right, we've lost our HI connection. We lost. We don't understand anymore that intimate connection between the TH, as I say, and the I, the body. You know, and when we do, we can combine. Well, all things are possible. I think
Wait a minute. You're saying there's a Lost Highway was a record company?
it's a record label. Yeah,
Huh, I've never heard of that.
it's a record label.
Yeah.
Timothy Schmidt, Timothy B. Schmidt. He was ex bass member for the Eagles. That's his own record label, and all encoded,
Australian.
all encoded, all encoded. Oh, there's so many clues everywhere. So many clues everywhere. So ultimately, the lost highway. We've lost our highway. H-I-I-H. I've pointed out before Antonio Superant. He's connected with Patricia Steer, Magical Mystery Tour, Mark Sergeant Pepper, all pointing in the same direction. But Antonio Superant's backwards is star I be
Well,
us.
you know, it's funny because I've always thought that he has an incredibly strong resemblance to Brian Cox, the physicist.
Really?
Well, I mean, they look very similar.
He actually imitated Brian Cox when he was doing
Yeah,
a skate with Jaron, right? So maybe you got it
I
from
think that's
there.
funny, but I think that they might be the same person.
Oh goodness. Oh goodness. I've definitely never considered that, but I will bear it
Here,
in
let me show
mind.
you what I mean. I made some images of that.
I'd definitely like to see that, man.
Okay, here, hold on for a second.
What do you think of that treasure anyway? No,
I think that's very interesting. I mean, I'm gonna have to think about it more
well,
because you just can't. No, it's very cool. Like I'll listen back to this and then sort of take it up. Do some parallel
yeah,
further research because it's just a lot of information to try to take in all at once. But very cool.
excellent.
I think you're definitely onto something. And
Oh,
I've
absolutely.
seen the Alice in Wonderland. Okay, here, hold on. Oops. Check this out. Oops.
I'm looking forward to seeing this one. Never heard this
Do you see it?
suggested. Hang on, let me.
Like this is not very well done actually, but I could do this better. But I mean, I think it's pretty easy to see that they look pretty similar. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I say, I could. I just think I didn't spend a lot of time making this
I
image.
think I might have pulled this one out of your bum. But possibly not. Possibly not. I give you the benefit of the doubt in a sense.
Well, yeah. Hey, I'm not claiming that it's necessarily the case. I'm just saying that it always struck me that I wish that I had a better one actually because I'm feeling like if I'm gonna even bring something like this up, I would rather have a
Mm.
stronger example like the Armstrong Gagarin one. But I don't know. I think it's I just see it that they yeah, and he did an impression. I mean, obviously he's kind of acknowledging that there's some sort of similarity there, but often I think that what they'll do when they take on these dual roles is that they'll play opposite each other, right? Like it'll be like the flat earther and the guy who says all flat earthers are idiots. Like,
That's an interesting possibility now, and I'll tell you. I mean, I know Antonio Superance is an actor playing a part. He'd be
mhm.
pretty talented actor to pull that off, and the fact that he did this skit with journalism was another actor. This might be their way of revelation, and I will definitely seek out video of Brian Cox. I have spoken only recently to Antonio Superance as well. So
Well, I don't want to like. I'm not trying to condemn him either. Like, I'm
no,
not.
no, don't worry about that. I've already done that, man. I've already done that again and again. Not condemn them as such, but just call them out as an actor playing a role, playing a part. But the fact that, as I say, Alice in Wonderland is so pertinent. And just before Alice receives her crown, you have to reread it again. I recommend it to everybody.
Yeah.
You'll just have to reread it again and again. But before Alice receives her crown, the solution to the riddle we solved was oyster or I star. and Antonio Superat's his name backwards, the star IBS, the chances again become infinitely sort of improbable the more pieces of information you find. And yeah, we're not making any calls. You point something out and let the listener mull it over and do their own adequate investigation. All there is at the ultimate is the individual, right? I'm only myself here. That's all I can relate to the whole of my life, and I know that there's a puzzle here waiting for us all. It's all of our
Mhm.
story to be unraveled. And well, who knows where it might lead, right? It might lead to wonders. Who knows? Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Everything's worth exploring, right? I
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
a lot, but
um,
yeah, people have resistances to certain areas of consideration, like we were, like we were encountering before, where just even bringing up the idea of people being, if it's not precisely exactly the same, if they change their hair color, then they're like, no, it couldn't possibly be, or something. But it's like, I mean, I know that that's
that's a bit worrying now. I've had it out with Des before, but that sort of rush to judgment and a sort of a scoffing at somebody who
yeah.
considers something that's not very courteous, first of all.
Well, I think
And
it's more unhealthy for the person who's doing
right,
it, because it's like they may like that's how, it's just like people scoff at the flat earth. It's like you can miss something really important by not
yeah, exactly.
just leaving the possibility open. Like,
Yeah,
because he's like, there's 100% no way that that could possibly be true, but it's like, well, no, it's not impossible. Like, it might be unlikely, it might not be true, but it's just you can't. That's too sure of almost. There's
yeah.
very very few things that you can speculate are
Exactly, and
absolutely that impossible, right?
this is what I'm saying. It's this strong reaction which gets my antenna up again because it's unjustified, and it's almost like it came along when the comparisons were made with Eric Dubé. So if there's one thing that people will protect if they're acting a part or they're part and parcel of a greater acting troupe is the actors' identities themselves.
Oh
So
yeah.
yeah, that's very and look, it's by no means making the case. I'm not making the case. I'm by no means making the call that Eric Dubé is Rick Clay, but it's just about pointing out what I think are similarities and just simply asking for someone's point of view. If you think no, that's not possible, I'll say fine.
So wait a
I'll
minute. Can
go
you just say who that guy is? Rick Lay.
Rick Clay.
Rick
All
Clay.
right,
Okay,
all
yeah.
right,
Sorry, I
Clay.
just never. And what is he? What is he? An actor or?
No, just type it in your own. Rick Clay, he's a conspiracy guy. He came on the scene. He seemed to put out lots of good. I don't even know much about him.
Okay.
He seemed to put out
I
some
just
good
never.
information. Then he vanished in a sort of a blaze of drama. He had an untimely death, and that was it then. And
Yeah.
Eric Dubé, Rick Clay comes onto the scene. You have these.
Oh man, yeah. When I just look up his thing on Google, like I see it a lot more just by looking at a couple of other pictures, just because also the build is very similar, very
Right,
thin.
right,
And
right.
that's, you know what? It's exactly like that guy that I met. That I thought
Oh, shit.
because the guy was like had this like Eric Dubai, where it's like he's really like thin but really wiry.
Right,
You know what I mean? Like he's like muscular but like thin. Like probably weighs like 140 pounds, but he's like really sinewy. He's not like doesn't really like I don't know, doesn't look as like weak.
right,
Just
right.
really thin, like a Sadu or something. Like
And I mean, is this guy? Is he currently sort of working the rounds, or was this an encounter many years ago, or what's the story?
no, this was just like a couple months ago.
Really, man,
Yeah.
really well. I hope you'll. I hope
I
you.
like I say, the thing is that I
Hope
think that
you'll
the person that I met was as far as I know, is the real person. So like to invite that kind of attention to that person, it would be very dubious if just in case it was. I don't know. I guess I don't know. It's
First
just
thing,
weird, man. Because I mean, he seems like a pretty nice guy. I don't know.
yeah, well, I mean, it's not about whether these people are good guys or not in one sense. First of all, we have to identify if they're acting a part. But the point,
Mhm.
what's the worst that could happen to him? I mean, first of all, you'd have to take a look at a video and say, well, okay, I think that that might be the same guy. Then you'd ring him up, or then you send him an email and ask him, is
Yeah.
this the case? In one sense, I think they're there to be sort of found out.
Sure,
I
but
actually think
I
it's an
will tell
important
you that,
part of the role.
interestingly, when you work in the film industry, or I'm getting some feedback from you there. Is that you?
Just go mute a second.
Okay. You know, one thing that I've found, um, or one thing that people are, you know, I guess people are kind of vaguely aware of it, but is that if you work on a TV show or a movie, like you have to sign a contract that says you will not speak about any aspect of the production at all to anyone, or particularly if they might repeat it. I don't know. I should find a contract to make a video about it, because it's like you can't say it to anyone who will either repeat it or someone who might be inclined to publish it. Like you basically sign a non-disclosure agreement about all aspects of your work on the production. So it's, you know, like and it is taken very seriously in the sense
Yeah.
that you can lose your career. Like if you have to be, that's why they have it like that, right? Like, so I'm just saying, like, it's not,
Well, that's a pretty risky sort of decision you then come along
well,
to.
it's just, you have to if you're going to work in TV. Like when you
No,
get a
no,
job.
I'm saying for you, Nami, to come along and say that you know this character that could possibly
Well,
be.
I'm not saying what the show was or who it was, right? Like that's what I'm saying. I'm trying to offer this information the best I can, but at the same time, I also kind of do believe in like honoring agreements, right? Like,
The only thing is, you might be pressured into that by others who you know better, I suppose, and
what do you mean pressured into what?
well, I mean, disclosing a name. So if the leading character on Flat, one of the leading characters in Flat Earth is definitely a talk show host or something in Toronto, you might be pressured into, I don't know who you hang around with or associate with or whatever. But I should think it was important for us to find out this was the case, because then this would just lift back the veil on another
Yeah.
deception.
Well, you know, I think just me even just sharing that information is somewhat valuable, you know.
Okay.
But it also
Uh,
gives people a starting place. Like, I mean, the thing is though, another thing that's interesting about film productions that I will like disclose to people is that a lot that I've seen this on a couple of shows that I worked on, is that sometimes they say that the show is being shot in a different city than it is.
right.
Like they'll say, like, I worked on one show in that was shot in Toronto, but then on the IMDb page it said it was shot in North Carolina.
Hmm.
So you can't always even, and you know the way that they'll do that is that maybe they shot one scene in North Carolina,
Right.
but sometimes, you know, they'll just do little bits and pieces in different places for whatever the reason, like on location or something. But there's so much, like, I have to say my experience is that there's like there's so much secrecy. Like it's really not like other business, like other industries. Like other industries are not really very secretive. You know, like you could talk about your experiences at your job or whatever. It's not a big deal to anyone.
Hmm.
But like I've just seen so much misrepresentation or distortion, or, you know, just sort of like misleading descriptions of where things were shot and who was involved and things like that. It's just interesting. Um,
Yeah.
and it's a big. It's
Of
just
course.
important to understand that, like, not everything that you even necessarily read about an actor or a location of where something was made is necessarily accurate.
I don't take it that any of it's accurate at this
Sure.
stage.
Yeah, no, I'm sure you don't, but I'm just saying that, like, I can verify that I've seen that from a first-hand perspective. That,
Yeah.
but then you also sign a form that says that you won't talk about it. So, and the people in the film industry really take it seriously, because it's not easy to get into it, and people really cherish their jobs because, you know, it's a job that people tend to
Right.
enjoy, and it pays well, and it's kind of a cool industry to be in. And it's a good job. You know what I mean? Like working in television is a good job.
Yeah, well,
Project based, you get paid well, things like that.
you certainly have to. One certainly has to look out for one's livelihood, but yeah, maybe some other way we can find of
Well,
clarifying.
I'm trying to contribute as much as I can. Like I'm gonna do. I have a whole bunch of ideas for videos. I've just been waiting till I had some time off. And I'm going to be working with a guy who's a professional editor to try to put out some of this stuff with some good quality. So I'm doing what I can, you know. But you have to work within your own. Each one of us is inhabiting a different set of circumstances personally, right?
And what do you? Let me just ask you. What's your main sort of goal? First of all, in terms of how you can influence thinking, I guess, put out new information, and secondary within yourself. What sort of major questions you hope to maybe get a grip on?
Well, just probably the same ones as anyone else. Like what's going on and why, right? Like, I mean, I like just understanding more clearly what the purpose of all of this deception is, and what is what's being hidden, right? Like does anyone know what the nature of the, because one thing that's really interesting to me, and just after a time of studying flat earth for a while, is just like there's no space. Like, so what, what's up there, and what are the stars, what is the moon, what is the sun, things like that stuff really interests me, just to have a kind of concept of what physical, or what appears to be the physical reality. Like, what is the nature of it? Is there anything there at all? What are these things? Like, where does the energy come from? Because there are still apparently some pretty, like, there are some laws of physics that seem to hold. So it's like, things like, yeah, I don't believe in gravity, at least as it's been theorized by science, but I'm really curious, like, why are we stuck to the ground? I find that just to be an infinitely interesting question. Like, what is the downward force? It's very weird.
I say, well, I've tried to answer a few of those questions, ask and answer a few of those questions myself. First of all, I say it's waters beyond. We're a bubble within waters, oceanic waters, whatever you want to call it, saline waters. I think when we had the inundation, we were inundated with the salt sea waters, and that constitutes what lies beyond. We went from being an intact bubble to a collapsed bubble, if you will. And what keeps us, what they describe as gravity, as a sort of a pulling force, is actually a pushing force.
I think I'm just saying, like, I'm not, regardless of whether I don't think it's pulling, but I'm just saying, like, what is causing it is an interesting question. Like,
that's what I think is causing it. So the force that's holding back the waters beyond was never meant for us, right? Because we're part of a broken system. The sun itself is part of a broken system. We are underneath the effects, are within this magnetic field that is sort of a constant force exerted upon us, a pushing force, the opposite of what we're told it is.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense, because it's actually long before I ever thought flat Earth, it always struck me as seeming pretty strange that it would be a pulling force, because where does that? That doesn't really make sense. Like,
no,
the whole concept of a pulling force. I mean, a pulling is just pushing. Just pulling it is just a complex form of pushing. It doesn't.
Yeah. And
it's like a vacuum that has no, like the concept of gravity that they present, like Einstein's gravity. It's like a vacuum with no exhaust.
Yeah.
It just keeps sucking, but there's into infinity, but there's no, it doesn't release anywhere, right? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a world of opposites, and this is.
Sorry, I gotta answer my phone. Sorry, I'll just like.
Okay, man. Okay. I won't keep it on for too much longer. Anyway, it's getting pretty late here. But it is a world of opposites, and this is what's been instructed to us when we look at the likes of Alice in Wonderland. It's a book of instructions: how to manipulate, how to reverse, how to invert, or be willing to, how to mirror, how to break apart, how to reconnect words. and see the puzzle in that new light. When you do that, then you will see that, you know, we've come away from the ball, spinning ball, careering ball Earth, but that doesn't mean we throw away all the scientific inverted commas information that's presented to us. I think within every lie, the truth is encoded. A perfect example of that is Eratosthenes. Myself, when I realized he wasn't, he's this guy. This is not a real representation. This is not a real character. This man has no real existence. When I looked for an anagram within the name, it was a perfect anagram of seas, not Earth. Now, of course, we're told by all the Boulder antagonists that he was the first to see Earth, right, in terms of his two sticks and um, the spherical ball, the difference in length of shadows, all this sort of stuff. So yeah, that's a perfect sort of example of how the lie encodes the truth, and yeah, this is what we must do with most of the information: flip it over, turn it on its head, and see what emerges, and how does that fit into your greater picture. Um, yeah, that's the important thing. But it's been pretty interesting. I will definitely take a look at Neil Armstrong and Yuri Gagarin. Um, Excellent. Radio Gaga came to mind. But
Yeah. Oh, you know
we know.
something interesting. You know what Gagarin means in Russian?
Go on,
It
go
means
on.
loon.
Moon.
Loon, like the bird.
Loon, is it?
Yeah, yeah,
I don't think I've heard of a bird, but of course we know the lunar cycle. So the fact that Gagarin means loon and Neil Armstrong was the first man on the loon or on the
yeah,
moon
yeah, exactly.
is very enticing, right? And again, it's almost nummy as if when the time is right, we would see. It's not very difficult to see in one sense, right? But we would see through the guise. And well, I think the time is right now. Once you make your way to flat Earth, being challenged on all sides, and I agree with you what you said earlier on. If we look at these people, and I think this is the purpose of these people, they keep coming back again and again, challenging every newcomer to flat Earth to think their way through and understand that they are indeed on a flat and stationary earth. It's only the most important thing that you need to understand ever before you can sort of progress. So yeah, it needs must that you be challenged on your view and you sort of you come to copper fasten the views that you do hold regarding your home, and then you're sort of ready to deal with greater truths. I think and I think there are so many greater truths waiting for us um, to venture into. In one sense, I think the future is more certain than the past, and everything that I've been finding out anyway has been pointing to the same year, which is 2018. So if all of this is sort of been unrolled according to a fixed and set timeline, 2018 makes good sense to me. Not only in terms of its connection to the dodo,
Hmm.
but also in terms of just this real new look at our revised historicity or historicalness. I mean, it's an interwoven story that's been told. Just about 420. The dodo is associated with 420, but the dodo is said to be discovered in 1598. So, if the dodo is the face of the flat Earth, there's a reason for all of these times and dates and facts and figures, right? They're all
Yeah.
encoded. So it's 420 years from 1598 to 2018. When I take it, this is just, again, all different clues have been pointing to the same thing, that Earth Mark II will be launched. The bubble that has collapsed will be reinflated. And I think we're seeing that in some form as well. I don't think there's many of us can doubt that the sun has changed somewhat. I think it's increased in frequency. What I've come to understand as well is that all there is, we live inside a enclosed electromagnetic, reflective, mirror-like, watery barrier, and all there is the sun and its reflected artifacts. That's what I've come to find out. The moon and the sun are intimately connected. One is
Mm.
a reflection of the face of the other, and the stars are just a displayed reflection of the face of the sun. That's a lot to take in. But the point being that this greater picture is there for us to unravel ourselves. This is
What
where
about
our
the
imaginations, yeah,
What about the
have to come.
Milky Way? What do you think about that?
Man, I mean, I found. Did you not see my? You might have seen my video, man. I
I
think
haven't
this.
really watched. I haven't. I just subscribed to your channel like before I joined this chat, so I'm not familiar with your material.
I think
So I'll check it.
I think I think this will be recognized amongst all the other finds. This will be recognized as one of the biggest finds ever. I'm thinking because, man, I mean, first of all, you can't refute it. When you do the examination yourself, I'll post the video. I'll push in chat here. Let me just see how to open this. Yeah, when you do the comparison yourself, you will. It is a match, and then you have to decide how the fuck is it a match. It's called the Milky Way on the Moon. I mentioned Eratosthenes a second ago. How will I get back into here now? Here,
Well, that sounds interesting. The Milky Way on the moon.
Milky Way on the Moon, right? So I'll just post a link in chat here. There you go. Well, if you between two craters, Eratosthenes and Eudoxus. Now, Eratosthenes has come up in relation to a spherical Earth. He was the man who saw the Earth for the first time, but his name is an anagram of sees not Earth. There's a crater, a swathe going between craters Eratosthenes and Eudoxus, Eudoxus, which is an anagram of Euexodus. So it's going from sees not Earth, which is Eratosthenes, to Eudoxus. It's all detailed in that video, and it's the most visible swathe on the moon. Well, I mean, it hit me that this looks very much like the Milky Way, right? But how could the two be connected in any sense? So I did a little comparison. You can see, not very professional or anything, but at the end of it, I clarified for myself that indeed these two are the same. The Milky Way is to be found on the moon between these two craters. Now you got to explain it. So
I'll watch that. But to me, I'm whether I think those are interesting avenues to explore. Like, and I think it basically does just require people to follow their intuitions. Not necessarily that it means it's true, but that you just have to like turn over every rock like that, right? Like because
right.
we don't even know what the moon is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but what's really the important work is to just like I just get the sense that it's like we just have to lose more and more assumptions. We just have to get rid of deeper and deeper layers of assumptions. Like, there's the assumption that, oh, it's a sphere. But then, when you look at it, it certainly doesn't present as a sphere. Like we only see one face of it and it's evenly illuminated. And so it's like, okay, so then is it even a physical mass? That's another question, right? Like we just have no way of determining any of these of its qualities and that with that kind of clarity. So it does seem like, and the fact that the sun and the moon are the exact same size from our perspective, the parent size is the same, right? Like they can eclipse each other perfectly.
Yeah.
It does seem unlikely.
Yeah, they're one and the same, Nami. They're one and the same.
Yeah, no, I mean, like that seems like
all we have to think for me, all we have to think in terms of is water, light, and reflection. That's what we get. So when the sun comes along and is shone against the barrier, it's a watery barrier. I did a show yesterday, a hangout yesterday, where I posted 3 videos at the start, and in one sense, they all dealt with all the aspects. One of the aspects was the flat and stationary Earth. Well, when you can see 11, 12 miles from a foot off of the water, that proves that the Earth is flat, right? There's no going beyond that. And a Wide Awake channel has done much work on that. Another one was a video of something crashing into a barrier, and you had this ripple-like effect emanating from the crash point. It was very indicative itself. But another one then was some sort of a meteor or a bright light falling, and you could see its reflected artifact milliseconds later in the distance. So we're dealing with a reflective surface. When you take this into account, and again, this is not about proving anything to anybody. This is about you having your own voice, painting your own picture, and recapturing your imagination. Your imagination has been hijacked. The one good thing I think is the story has been told to us. So if you're paying attention and if you have that curiosity and you want to find out, then you'll be able to put your own picture together. But don't have any hopes of convincing anyone else, right? This is not the point of it all. We're still trying to ask the right questions and answer them for ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's certainly the way I look upon any of these type of discussions with your good self or with Jamie, like we were talking about earlier on. Is it's there for an open, friendly sharing of information or ideas, point of view, and this is the way we can all sort of progress and ultimately maybe help each other in terms of understanding. But there is far too much concrete has been taken. So
Yeah.
yeah, we have to
But
deal with
people just falling into the same trap of rigid attachment to some dog, like, a rigid official version, like wanting to attach themselves to that as soon as possible, right after they've just realized that the one that they believed for their whole life is
right.
completely false, right? It's like it's so easy, like, to want to just cling to some other
Right,
model
and I certainly will have no part
without
of that.
sufficient evidence.
And I certainly will have no part of that. And let no man tell any other man how to think or what to think about.
Yeah.
We've all come to this point. I think we're all due a certain level of respect, and
Yeah.
um, yeah, let that be the way forward. Can I just ask you, Nami? I'm going to go shortly then because as I say, it's getting late here. But have you any more dealings with Anthony? Anthony's done some fine arguing the case with Ranty.
I
Uh,
have not had any direct dealings with him. I don't know. I didn't find his channel to be. I unsubscribed to it at some point. I don't know. I find him to be a little bit long-winded, I think, or something. I don't know. It just didn't. It wasn't interesting me that much after a certain point. But I have checked out some of his material in the past. I mean, I don't really have a time to watch a lot of stuff,
yeah.
so I'm pretty selective, I guess, and
Okay.
a lot of I'm sure I'm not. That's not to say anything bad about the guy or anything.
Well,
But,
okay. I was just
be
saying
honest.
he's doing some great arguing the point over Nathan Oakley's channel regarding the Olive Man and what should and shouldn't be seen.
Yeah, yeah,
We know the issue is dead in the water anyway, but it's certainly one thing I think he should sort of build on and keep shouting about it from the rooftops, because what's happening is all the bowlers are hanging themselves in one sense because they all got a call each and every time illusion. They've got a call.
yeah,
Um, mirage, some sort of
yeah,
intangible reason behind all of this, and the fact that they're all on the same wagon.
yeah,
I think, well, it's going to end up showing them up ultimately for what they are. But
yeah,
no, generally I like Anthony, but and I said this to him himself. I mean, he's holding back, so I placed him in the same sort of group as acting a part. To what extent, or to what's the ultimate motivations, I don't know. But I do
yeah.
like the man. I do like the man. I think he's a good-hearted man. But again, I have to recognize that someone is acting a part because they're limited in what they
Yeah.
can
Well, I
say.
mean, I don't like that. May not necessarily mean that they're bad, right?
No, no, no. And I
But
certainly
that that's we're in a minority of even giving that consideration, right? Because most people imagine that anybody who might be involved in
exactly.
that thing would be necessarily evil. But
Yeah, as I've often said, there's no sort of middle road. All these people are either working for this dastardly power that's against mankind, and hence they're working against our children and their well-being, or else there's a greater game going on, and
yeah, it's
maybe
so
they're engaged
interesting, isn't it?
in a nobler lie. And if we were in possession of the information, we might do this the exact same ourselves for the purposes
Yeah,
of helping our fellow man and waking us up to our true reality and our true potential.
yeah.
That's the way I
Or you
like to
have to
look
wake yourself up, right? It's like nobody's going to do
at
it
it.
for you. Maybe that's the
Exactly.
point of it. Is that,
Exactly.
like I was saying, it's like if they told you that the Earth was flat, you might believe it for the wrong reasons, and then you wouldn't appreciate it.
Yeah,
Right?
this is all about you. This is all about the individual. This is all there ever has been, right?
Yeah.
And
So it's like everything has to be stacked against the individual in order for the individual to really emerge as a powerful figure.
right, right, and most especially if we are greater forces in the first place, and I absolutely know that we are. And
Yeah.
all, as I said earlier on, Jamie's, all this shit is easy for us, right? All this shit is easy for us. We just have to snap out of it and wake up to our true reality, and then we'll see all the signs. Who knows where it's going to end, not me, but yeah, we have hope in our hearts anyway, and we've got to, yeah, we've got to figure out our own story first of all. Yeah, that's the ultimate point, and all the clues are there, is what I'm seeing anyway. I look forward to speaking to you again, man, and
Oh, yeah, if I see you and during a chat, I'll be sure to drop in and say hi.
cool. Excellent, man, and thanks very much for coming. I'll do my own little bit of looking into Neil Armstrong. I find that fascinating, absolutely fascinating. So,
No,
yeah,
I'm glad that you're receptive to that because I really see it. I think it's very strong.
yeah, that's, I never considered that before, but of course we know, well, I did know, coming from separate aspects, that both of them are actors at the
Yeah.
stage.
Well,
The
that's why
fact
we
that they,
gotta. That's what's the value of coming on these chats and sharing information, right? Like, there's so many observations to make that we have to pool our resources. And
excellent, excellent.
anyway,
Okay,
yeah, great
Lorraine.
talking to you, Pete. Thanks a lot
Okay,
for having
good
me.
man. Thanks very much, man. And until the next time, and I'll just sing us out here as I normally do, and yeah, I'll see you next time.
Okay, see you later.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Okay, that was great. That was great. An open-minded discussion. So again, um, learn to consider things yourself and on their own merits. There's no idea that's too ridiculous, but look out for the common themes. So yeah, that was brief, and I guess, as I said, I would certainly be looking into those comparisons. Fascinating possibility, and indeed, it's almost like poetic how it slips in. And I think, in one sense, this is how it's written as well. And we come to realize, and hopefully come to laugh our arses off about all of this at some point. So on that note, I'm going to leave you with the usual and say thanks very much. Um, and keep it a bit low here because it's pretty late. So until the next time, no bad. Oh, of all the money whene'er I spent, I've spent it in good company. And all the harm that e'er I did others, it was to none but me. And all I've done for want of wit, to memory now I can't recall. So fill to me the parting glass, good night and joy be with you all. If I had money enough to spend and leisure time to sit a while, there is a fair maid in town that's only has my heart beguiled. Her rosy cheeks, her ruby lips, my own she has my heart enthralled. So fill to me the parting glass, good night, and joy be with you all. Oh, the comrades that e'er I had, they are sorry for my going away. And all the sweethearts that e'er I had, they would wish me one more day to stay. Since it falls unto my lot that I should rise and you should not, I'll gently rise and I'll softly call the night, and joy be with you all. I'll gently rise and I'll softly call good night, and joy be with you all. Good night, friends. I love you, Steve.